I'm feeling cute.
Yeah. Okay. I have to ask you flashcard questions because that's what I do.
Oh no.
So this is Chris Jones. Hi, Chris Jones.
What's up?
On Grace's graduation day.
Yes! Pew, 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 pew. All right.
We're on UCLA campus where we boldly smoked a joint.
Listen now.
No, but I explained. We get to smoke a joint. Why? Because, auntie levels, right?
Because we aunties.
They're not going to come over here telling us to put that joint out. I will spank them so hard in the ass.
She will.
They will pass the fuck out.
And I'll record it.
Okay. Here are the flashcard questions,
Okay.
right? It's called, this K-drama is called My Princess. So let's say you're like a 20-something-year-old orphan, okay? And you were adopted into a single mother. No, she was married. She became a widow. All right, so you were adopted into this family along with another adoptee, same age as you, but your mother said you had to call her Unni, which is big sister.
Okay.
So you became the baby daughter in the family. But one day, somebody comes up to you and says, you're actually the daughter of the last king, the last official king of Korea, before the monarch was overtaken by the Japanese colonial people. And they say you're actually a princess. What do you do?
What do I do? Wait, how old am I?
Mid-20s.
Mid-20s. And I'm sorry, my family's treating me like shit.
Yeah.
Am I getting along with them?
Not really.
No.
Yeah, they don't treat you very well, no.
Sticking out like a sore thumb.
Kind of like your older sister, the adoptee older sister. She's a real bitch.
Okay.
So your older sister's not she's not better than you by any means, but she does, in social terms, like she did go to college, got better grades, like she's showing more of that social potential than you ever did. And she's very competitive with you. She's jealous of you, but you're the one that, these government people, these CEOs, corporate CEOs, they come to you and they're like, you're a princess. Like, you're the last remaining royal blood there is, and we want to honor that.
So I'm being honored in what way? What am I getting?
You get to move into a fucking mansion, like the palace. You get the royal treatment. Like, they're gonna treat you like
Why would I not want this though? Other people that say no, I'm gonna stay with this family.
I guess I'm asking you a stupid fucking question.
No, I'm not saying it's stupid though. I'm just saying we're conversing. So,
Yeah. You would say yes, I want all those things. Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay, in the middle of that, let's say that your dead father, the adoptive one, let's say his name sort of gets pulled through the mud because he had some scandals back in his day. And now that you're royalty and you're in the press and everything, they're sort of muckraking the dirt out of you, and that's one part of the dirt. And now your father's name is smeared all over the press, and your mother is very angry with you because of that. What do you do?
I mean, she's not really my mother, right?
Yeah, I guess not. She only raised you for 20 years. Yeah.
I mean,
you're being real.
No, I'm not saying that I would just forget. I'm not going to just forget this lady, but I think me speaking as the person that I am now would be different than if I was in my 20s. And I definitely understand the conflict.
Yes.
And all of that.
Okay.
There's conflict, but I think that a lot of times what keeps us kind of in unhealthy relationships with people that we love is that obligation. And I think that she should work on kind of not feeling as obligated as she might towards this whole situation, because she got a lot going on.
Okay. Yeah.
And she has to be fair to herself, So, and I think that the conversation should start from there.
Yeah.
You know, so I don't feel like she should go one way or another per se. I think that is a thing where she has to, you know, talking about alignment, be in alignment with herself before she decides what's best for her.
Okay. All right, so go to Peru, take some ayahuasca, you know, find
Exactly.
yourself, bitch.
Exactly.
Okay.
And, you know, maybe never come back. She
Yeah,
can do that
just stay
too.
there.
Just
Yeah, you're a
flight.
princess. Just stay there. Why come back? Why? Okay. All right. Very good. Okay. So the old CEO man who found you and said that you're the princess and like, you know, all this shit. He says that there's like one piece of evidence that the people need to see, which is this little pocket. It's like a little pouch.
What kind of pocket?
It's like a little pouch. It's not a pussy pocket. It's not a
I was just like, do they want to see her?
It's not a rubber
pocket?
vagina in a flashlight. No.
They
It's
need to like identify her and.
it's a cotton, traditional Korean cotton pouch. It's like a little pouch, and it has like the royal embroidery on it. And he says like, do you remember having this? You know, showing this as evidence will really like solidify your name. But you're like, no, I don't know where it went. I don't know what you're talking about. And then your older sister, the adoptee one, the one that hates you, is like all bitch. She one day turns up at the palace with that pouch and says, I'm the princess. I'm the princess.
So what would I do?
Yeah, what would you do?
Ooh. What would I do? I would probably find a way to prove her wrong. I'd have a conversation first.
With
You
her.
know, maybe with my, you know, tape recorder or something like that. And record the conversation.
Surveil her ass.
I'd wear a wire.
Yeah.
Go deep and undercover. No,
Okay.
but yeah, I would definitely try to expose the truth.
Okay. All right. Let's say the CEO, that CEO man, the old man who's like, you're a princess and all this, right? He says he wants to leave all of his wealth to you, the princess, because he committed some crimes during the colonial period and betrayed the monarch, betrayed the king, which is how you and your father ended up in the streets.
Oh.
And then your father ended up dying and all this shit.
Oh.
And so he feels bad, remorse for this, so he wants to leave all of his millions to you. But he has a grandson, and his grandson's fine as hell, and he's such an asshole. And he's all like, no, grandpa, that's my money. Fuck this bitch, you know? And then this grandson, like out of desperation and anger, comes up to you and he says, how about you fuck all this princess shit and you just come live with me? What do you do?
Why would I do that? Rightfully mine. It's not yours. It does not belong to you. You are not entitled to it. You're not doing me a favor. That would be me doing you a favor.
Yeah.
Why would I do that?
Why? Why would anybody?
What's the incentive?
Why do you dumb bitches do that?
I don't.
Some dumb bitches do it. But he is that fine. He is so hot. My gosh.
Oh, he's the type to make you believe everything that
Oh.
he says.
Oh, and more.
Well.
Yes. I was just a spectator and I believed him. I was like, yeah, just give up your princess shit and go live with him.
Yeah.
I was saying that.
You know, I mean, oh, that's amazing. You see that out there?
Oh, that is amazing.
That looks beautiful.
And it's polluting the earth.
It
Hello.
is, but it was
Are you
very
going to pick
beautiful.
up that confetti plastic? It's going to be sticking in the grass.
That's absolutely not going to happen. All right.
Okay, last and final question.
Yes.
The fine guy, the really hot guy, he comes to his senses, you know, and he's like, I'm sorry for having been greedy and shit. Like, that my grandfather's money was never my business, was never mine to claim. Like, whatever he does is fine. Like, he's like, but I love you, you know? He says he does want to be with you. He wants to be with you. But, you know, in turn, because of your existence, he is losing all of his wealth, you know? Like, he is losing his heir title from his grandfather's wealth and all that. you know? He's losing all of that because of your existence, because you're the princess. You're going to get all this money and, you know, foundation money and all that stuff. So there's this little bit of conflict there, conflict of interest, a little bit of guilt. And then he goes away for 2 months, doesn't contact you, no nothing. And like you were texting him, you were like reaching out to him. He doesn't respond at all for 2 months. And after 2 months, he does show up. What do you do?
I mean, I don't think there's anything else to talk about after that. We were gone for 2 months. Like, why? Why is he coming back? Is he coming back because I need more information, first of all.
He wants to be with you.
So he's coming back because he wants to be reunited with me.
Yeah.
No. No, we're not doing that.
Yeah. 2 months of silence was too much. It's too long.
Yeah, I don't think that that's a situation where I would want to be tied up with. I would probably have enough going on at that point.
Other people.
You know, that's just me.
Other interests, yes. It's like, what do you mean? I was never waiting around for you. You were gone. I thought you were gone. I thought we said goodbye.
That's it. You know, money does not solve everything, but I think she would probably have enough money where he wouldn't need to be a motherfucking factor. It's just what I think.
Yeah. All right, yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chris. Welcome to K-Drama School. I'm your host, Grace Jung, and class is now in session. August 14th. It's the day I'm recording. Of course, you're hearing it a couple days later. I'm actually gonna go camping tomorrow by myself for the first time. Like, I've gone camping as a child. I've gone camping with friends, but I've never gone camping alone. And that is very scary for me. But I'm gonna try it out because something in me is just telling me, Grace, it's time to go camping by yourself, you know? Like, I'm still on this journey of shedding fears, like confronting my fears. And that's a big fear for me, being out in the woods alone, in the dark, where there are bears, you know? And I made the mistake of texting a friend of mine who has gone camping a lot. And I said to him, I was like, I'm really scared about going camping alone tomorrow. And he was just like, good luck out there, sister. Which was just like, dude, like, I don't need to be told sarcastically, good luck. I need encouragement. And you know what he does? He just fuels my anxiety even more. He's like, are there cougars out there? Get a bear spray. I'm like, what the fuck is a bear spray? We need a separate spray for bears? Why? Like, I'm bringing a can of mace. I'm not really afraid of bears so much as I am afraid of, you know, men, of people. Right? Because I'm going out into the woods alone with a vagina. And usually when a woman goes out into the woods alone with her vagina, nothing good ever happens. You know? Like, she's doomed. Like, it's over if she goes out into the woods alone with a vagina? Are you kidding me? The show I'm going to talk about today is called My Princess. It's a 2011 K-drama from MBC written by Chang Young-sil. And it stars Song Seung-eun and Kim Tae-hee. And you couldn't find a more beautiful couple on screen. I mean, they're not married to each other. Kim Tae, as everybody knows, is married to P. Okay. This was a interesting show. It's a rom-com and interweaves the what if scenario, right? The what if Korea had continued to retain its monarchy to the present day. What would have happened? What would it look like? So that's the what if scenario. If you think about it, the members of the Korean monarch were still around less than 100 years ago in Korean society. The final members of the Korean Empire were in reign up until the year 1910, which is when Japan officially annexed Korea as a colony. And then subsequently their monarchy was
forcibly removed and dissolved. Even though I'm not a fan of that horrible show, The King Eternal Monarch on Netflix, what if the monarchy continued to reign? What if Korea never got into a war? What if Korea was never colonized by Japan? What would that monarchy look like? Especially if it was set in Busan, which is the city I was born in. Like, what would that look like? And I loved the imagery of it. I mean, that was awesome. So you could literally just watch like the first episode of The King Eternal Monarch and just get your rocks off with that first episode, just see the images, and then you could just forget it. The show sucks. That show is really bad, okay? It's as bad as Vanilla Sky. My Princess is a show about a girl named Yishul who was an orphan raised by a working class family. She also has an older sister who is also an adoptee, and she is Seul's biggest rival, competing for their mother's attention. Okay, and Seul is later told that she's actually the long lost daughter of the monarch's last reigning king, and she is asked to take her place in Korea as the princess. And a whole bunch of readjusting takes place as a result, right? I felt like the show was a good commentary on the pressures of a young woman not wanting to outshine her jealous older sister and not disappoint her adoptive mother. It's like her wanting to do what is right for everyone is like it's the biggest priority, right? So it's got this heteronormative filial message about what is moral and what makes an upright woman. What sacrifices does she need to make in order to maintain harmonium in the home, in the palace, in the nation, right? For that reason, the message behind this show is utter crap. Okay, I completely disagree with it. All right, no one woman has the responsibility for that many things. It's just, come on, like, celebrate your freedom. You have agency, okay? But I like this show for the fun spoils of watching it. Like, it was like watching an extended version of the shopping scene in Pretty Woman, right? Like, you get to see this poor orphan girl get all the clothes, get all the shoes. She gets all the rooms in the palace that she wants, okay? She even gets a really hot guy, all right? Song Seung-gun is fine as hell. Oh my God. That motherfucker is so hot. It's like ridiculous. And I do find this show to be somewhat dated. It came out 10 years ago. It's somewhat dated in that the man who was assigned to be her teacher, Song Seung-gun, he is just extremely inappropriate. He treats her like a little girl, even though she's in her 20s. And he talks down to her a lot, condescends. He force kisses her a lot, okay? The show makes a very interesting commentary on how the media and press work around royalty, okay? You can even code switch that and say it's a jab at how celebrities feel victim to the media and victim to the publicists and the team who design or construct an image of celebrity for the world to see through media, right? And I think this conversation is especially relevant in our age of hashtag Free Britney. But seeing as Britney appears to be on her way to being completely free from her father's, conservancy thing, I think we can just move on to more pressing matters in the world, like the earthquake in Haiti, for instance, like Syria, for instance, like the Delta variant that's still killing many, many people in our world, for instance. Okay. So if you want to just zone out and watch a fun Cinderella slash Pretty Woman rom-com K-drama, My Princess is a good one. I recommend it. And both Kim Tae-hee and Song Seung-gun have very good comedic timing, and they're just very cute to look at. They're very pretty people, okay? So if you want to look at pretty people for like an hour 15 per episode, I think they're like 16 to 20 episodes. Just like enjoy the pretty people on your screen, okay? Why not? You deserve it. You deserve to see some pretty things. Today's guest is Dr. Bambi Haggins. Dr. Haggins is a comedy connoisseur. Okay, she is the author of the amazing book Laughing Mad, which goes deep into the history of Black stand-up comedy in America and how Black comedians entered the screen world and what they had to go through in order to make it onto shows like The Tonight Show and Hollywood movies, right? Dr. Haggins is also a media studies professor at UC Irvine. And she's just a lot of fun to talk to because not only is she a wonderful scholar that our world and society are very lucky to have, but she's also an amazing teacher and mentor, right? And Dr. Haggins knows comedy very, very well. She knows it well as a historian, as a scholar, as a fan, and it's just been a lot of fun talking to her about comedy. on this podcast because, the tea gets hot. Yeah, let's get into it. Let's talk to Dr. Bambi Haggins.
I'm writing about Lovecraft Country
Oh, very
and
nice.
Insecure.
Mm-hmm.
Not together. They're the
Mm-hmm.
two.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What's the angle for Lovecraft?
With Lovecraft Country, I'm talking about Misha Green's version of Lovecraft Country
Okay.
and how, like when I first heard that they were making it into a show,
Mm-hmm.
I was really worried
Mm-hmm.
because there are some things that happened in the book that had me feeling some kind of way.
Yeah.
And she basically took care of the things that were my biggest concerns.
Okay.
But she also tried to make each of the experiences, each of the journeys of the characters really resonate with this particular historical moment.
Mm-hmm.
By, did you see Lovecraft Country?
I just watched some of the pilot, but no, I'm not a Lovecraft fanatic or anything.
Yeah, they changed, a little boy became a little girl in this. So, like, there's a lot of things about the males they could talk about, but men always get talked about. So I'm focusing on the women.
Yes.
And the women also are related, mother and daughter and two sisters.
Right.
And the idea of solidarity and yet individuation, being able to realize your own potential.
Yeah.
At the same time.
What do you think of that? Like, I mean, this is a narrative device that I see often in television, especially Korean television. You have this constant trope, typically of the orphan. And, right now you're talking about mother, daughter, sister kind of relationships, but like in Korean dramas, you always have an orphan, a female protagonist who is an orphan.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, why is that the case? Other than just like practical purposes for like plot, getting the plot, sort of raising the stakes, driving the plot. Besides that, like as a character analysis, right? Like, what is it about the death of parents? Like a child who has no parents. Like, what is it about that is particular, that is constantly present on television? I was just wondering.
I think it's because there are ways in which those characters are tabula rasa, right? We don't know what baggage they're bringing with them. Even if they tell us about the orphanage or,
right.
there is this idea of them having something to prove, always
Right.
having something to prove. And to a greater degree because either their parents died, they were abandoned, they were given up. So there is this, I think it's because there needs to be this declaration of selfhood on some level, but at the same time, just as strongly, the desire to belong.
Right. Right. And what's unique about the character dynamics that you're talking about here with Lovecraft is like there is a bond. I mean, they're all related and there's this bond, but it's also like, I mean, anybody who has a family knows how difficult it is to be with a family. So, I mean, that's interesting. I mean, do the characters get along? Like, is this a loving, supportive kind of
all
relationship?
complicated relationships.
Yeah.
Letty and Letty is Jurnee Smollett, who's like beautiful light-skinned woman. Ruby is, and traditionally Eurocentrically beautiful. And Ruby is Woomy. Oh, what's her last name? She's also in Loki. Anyway,
Mhm.
she is a she's a Zoftig, dark black woman,
Mhm.
but she's gorgeous. I
Mhm.
mean, she's gorgeous.
Yeah.
Because most people don't make it on screen unless you got something going on.
Oh yeah.
Um, but they have very different because they're half sisters.
Okay.
Well, that's implied. It's not stated,
Okay.
but her relationship, one's relationship with the mother is very different than the other's relationship with the mother.
Yes.
And one, Ruby, stayed home, stayed there,
Mhm.
and you know, uh, the other one, Letty, was off doing her thing.
Mhm.
Um, and they allude to some of it being protest related,
Okay.
but
Yeah.
early civil rights era.
Sure. Yeah.
And apparently Ruby sent Letty money to come back for her mother's funeral,
Uh-huh.
and she ended up using that money to bail people out of jail.
Huh. Okay. Oh, that's
And
badass. Mhm.
and so there is the complication of, well, I mean, there are some things that are kind of weird. Letty seems very, very loose,
Yeah.
in terms of being free spirited and free with her body, but
Mhm.
she ends up being the virgin,
Hmm.
and Ruby ends up sleeping with a white man who is, well, if you're ever going to watch it, I don't want to spoil that.
Okay.
But it's so this is really complicated,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
Ruby's idea of acceptance is really tied to, she's been trying to get a job at Marshall Fields
Okay.
forever,
Huh.
and they finally hire a black person, and
Mhm.
of course she's light skinned like Letty,
Yes.
and so that's one trajectory for her.
Mhm.
And then there's Hippolyta and Dee, which I think is interesting because Hippolyta obviously is Hippolyta, and
Mhm.
her daughter is Diana. So
Mm.
you have the Wonder Woman um, sort of Easter egg laid in there,
Mhm.
and Hippolyta, Hippolyta. I want to say it the correct way, but they pronounced it Hippolyta.
Okay.
And Hippolyta actually was brilliant, like incredibly brilliant. She, when they discovered Pluto, she sent in the name, her suggestion for the name, because they were going to name it. And they named it the planet Pluto, but it was that some little white girl who was the granddaughter of the scientists um, who discovered it,
Mhm.
was given credit for the name. And so
Right.
there are all of these series of things that make her smaller and smaller and smaller.
Fascinating.
And she gets the opportunity not to be small. But
Yeah. That's dope. I like that because I think being an academic and being an artist um is like that's the trajectory. Like every single person and institution around the artist and academic is doing everything they can make to diminish that person. Like for instance, I was just looking because I'm on unemployment now,
mhm,
and I was just kind of looking for like postdocs and fellowships. Like I look like every couple of days, and I go on the UCLA Grapes website and I'm looking at the list, and on the top I see like STEM, engineering, some fellowship, starting salary 200,000. And right below it, it was like arts and humanities, 1 year fellowship, starting salary 28,000.
Oh yeah.
Right
Like
below that,
I can tell you right now, I'm not making 200,000.
it's like that disparity is so huge. Like 200,000 versus 28,000 is a huge disparity. And we spent just as much time in school, you know, we expanded our knowledge just as much. And what we do, the work that we do is just as life-giving and saving, I believe,
Yeah.
right? And yet, what we do is always diminished and demeaned. And it's like the more I think about it, the worse I feel. So I try not to think about it, you know? I've been doing guided, like 3 guided meditations a day, Bambi,
Oh,
daily.
baby.
You know, like I went to get a massage this afternoon because I was in Portland for a couple of shows and I just got back yesterday. So, after a flight, I like to get a massage. And my massage therapist was like, your back is like so much, like, she was like, did you lose weight? And she was like, your back is so much softer and you're a lot more flexible than when you and I first started working together. And I was like, yeah. And she goes, well, what did you do different? And I was like, I haven't been exercising. I haven't been dieting. I just literally have been doing more guided meditations. And I started to stop giving a shit. Like, I just stopped giving a shit. Like, I stopped thinking about money. I stopped thinking about what my credits are supposed to earn me. Like, I stopped caring completely. And yeah, like, my body is physically transforming. And I'm like, okay, well, if I have this, then like I don't really care, you know? I mean, how did
Yeah.
you feel like after you graduated, Bambi? Like,
Um, I was so under the gun
right.
because I'm a working class kid.
Yeah.
So the idea of not being employed was
Mm,
like not acceptable.
yeah.
It just,
Hmm.
I applied to so many places and so I got the job at Michigan,
Yes.
but it was like if you don't finish your dis, you
Hmm.
can start before you finish your dis,
Yeah.
but it's going to be at this much lower salary.
Right.
And everyone I knew who did that
Hmm.
took at least another 2 years to finish.
Damn.
So I was killing myself to get
Mm.
it done.
So
And
you were employed before you completed your dissertation.
I got the job offer. I
Wow.
didn't start until the disc was in hand,
Okay.
but I didn't. Um, but when I did the job talk and all that stuff,
Yeah.
um,
But
I
that's
didn't.
that's remarkable. I mean, I've been applying for a year, you know, as ABD since last year. Now I'm done. Now the disc is finished and everything's done, but it's still like it's still rough.
No, and not to sound really cynical,
Yeah.
but play heavy on the Asian American stuff in your letters
Yes.
because all of a sudden there's a recognition
All of a sudden,
that
yeah.
yeah,
After a bunch of
eh,
people die, right? It's always how it
yeah,
is.
yeah, yeah. Just like, when people kept talking about the racial reckoning last summer,
Right.
I said, I had reckoning a long time ago. This is your reckoning.
Yeah.
Um, but use that while you can use it.
Yes, for
And,
sure.
one of the things that I think I hurt you
Hmm.
in the postdoc
Why?
because uh, because UCI has such a strong Asian Pacific
Mm-hmm.
department,
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure there was someone who said, "Well, why isn't she working with one of them?"
Hmm. Mm, I don't
I
know.
I mean, I actually consciously thought about that.
Nah.
Um,
I
but
I yeah, no, I would say alleviate yourself from that thought. I don't think so. You know, it's I didn't get it because I wasn't supposed to get it. That's it. Like that's
yeah,
how I see it. But,
no,
yeah.
I understand. I mean, intellectually I understand that,
Right. Okay.
but it's
It's weighing on you.
yeah, I really wanted you to get it.
Oh yeah, me too. I was like, man, that would be so awesome. Like UCI working with Bambi, that would be so badass. And like even like Chon Noriega was like, yeah, that'd be great. That would be awesome. We were both like, yeah, it's gonna happen. And then it's just like it didn't happen. I was like, it is what it is. But that presidential postdoctoral fellowship thing was like a lot more competitive than any other year. And like I was supposed to apply to other schools, like Maryland had it. Excuse me. So many other schools had it, but when I reached out for faculty mentors and stuff, all of them were like, first of all, I don't know anything about your field. And I was like, you mean media studies? But they all see just Korean drama and they
Right.
freak out and they just dismiss it. And they were like, also, arts and humanities isn't getting any funding for that. Like, all of it is going to STEM this year. And I was like, okay. So since last year, like, I already saw the bleakness of it. And since last year, I went to the career counselor at UCLA and had a talk with her. And I don't know, she was just saying things to me that I feel like a career counselor should not say to a student. Things like, you really need a contingency plan for at least 1 year. She was like, the something like getting a job for arts and humanities was down by 40% in the last 5 years, and it's even worse due to COVID. And I mean, she was just giving me this doomsday talk that I just did not need to hear last summer. And in addition to that, like all the like SIG, there were these SIG groups, like SCMS SIG groups, where they would do
Mm-hmm.
like job talk and postdoctoral fellowship kind of like advice talks, and I sat in on them via Zoom, and they were all saying pretty much what my counselor said. Like, they're going to treat you like shit. They're not going to respect you. You have to fight for things. You have to be on top of it. It was just like alarm, 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 alert, alert, paranoia, anxiety. Like, they were just spreading this. And I just remember thinking, like, I am never going to
Oh, we're
come and sit
frozen.
in on any of these talks ever fucking again, because it's just, why spread this negative energy? Why clip our wings before we even get to fly? And I was just like, that's your experience, you guys. Like, that's not my experience. I'm not even going to think that I am going to end up like you. So I've been cutting that away too. That was a couple pounds off my back. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Oh, absolutely. But
so
there's another part of that
yeah.
you have to realize. Um, and I know this is going to sound, but white people aren't used to not getting what they want. I mean, I'm just being real.
Yeah. How does she know that they were white? They were. The career counselor was white. The people who were that paranoid and anxious were all white. Yeah.
Yeah, and we've on some level, on
Hmm.
every level,
Yeah.
have had to deal with pushing up against someone else's idea of me.
Right.
So we sell ourselves all the time. We
Right.
are always branding and marketing. That's the
Hmm.
only way you get through.
Hmm.
And so don't listen to them.
Yeah. No.
The job market was just as bad
Hmm.
when I applied.
Hmm.
It was the dip, and then it went back up, and then it went back down.
Yes.
Because that was 2000.
Right. You said one of the things you had to do was what?
leave California, be willing to leave
All
California.
right. Yes. Mm-hmm.
And it took me 16 and a half years to get back.
Mm-hmm. Man, and Michigan's so cold in the winter.
Oh, we're frozen.
Oh boy. Let's talk about comedy a little bit, something lighter. Right? Have you gone to any like live shows since we opened back up?
No, I haven't. I've just been writing.
Man. I mean, like, but don't you feel like, I mean, what do you do to balance it out? Because I can't sit and write like all day. Like, what do you do in between?
See, the problem is because post-surgery,
Uh-huh.
there are issues that I'm still dealing
I
with.
see. Okay.
And you know,
So,
it's in some ways I feel like I'm a lefty
mm,
who has to learn how to pitch with her right.
okay. I understand. So it does take up the whole day.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And not necessarily getting that much done. You know,
Right.
it's because I am a crafter.
Uh-huh.
I don't, I know you're not supposed to do this. I don't draft, really.
Wow.
I just write. I don't want to go on to the next sentence until the last sentence is right.
Wow.
So the revisions that I need to make are usually fairly minor.
Oh, wow.
But the problem right now is I get stuck.
Mm-hmm.
And the only way I think that I'm going to get beyond that is to try to find a new method in terms of writing. In fact, this is so crazy, but I've been working on it today. I'm trying to make a worksheet that I just fill out and then plug in to the draft.
Like, what kind of questions do you have in the worksheet?
Like, why did you choose to focus on the women, the mother and daughter and the sisters, rather than the fathers and son? And what I'm trying to, I guess what I'm trying to explain is I think that even though Atticus is definitely the central character, I feel like Misha Green has shifted it in a way that Atticus and Letty are the leads. And there are problems with Letty too. I mean, none of this is perfect. And that's, I mean, it's funny, like regular Black people like Lovecraft Country. The, sort of intelligentsia has a lot of problems with it.
Right. Yeah, we always do. Yeah. We ruin movies for ourselves.
Yeah, well, it's just like when I went and saw Black Panther. I saw it opening night at El Capitan with my sisters, and I saw more kente cloth in that room than I've seen in 20 years. They didn't have previews. They had a DJ. People, it was just, and I said, I'm not going to think about this. I just want to experience Black joy. That's all I want right now.
Yeah, let it in.
And, it's a patriarchal society. Yeah, it's also class-based. Yeah, there's, blah, 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 blah. But it was still, I mean, Okoye and Shiri are the shit, And there's no better ad lib line in years than "Hey, Auntie." With that was just it's well, I am Iron Man, but that's anyway.
It's beautiful though. Yeah.
It's I think that and what I'm really focusing on is why there are people for whom it really, really resonated.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I like
those
that.
people aren't necessarily in academia, and they're not necessarily the rulers of the Twitterverse,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and so I'm kind of looking at one of my favorite podcasts of all time always does recaps, The Black Guy Who Tips.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of my
Yes.
sources is their recaps.
Right.
And Kenitra Brooks, who is an academic,
Mm-hmm.
but was writing for The Root. So it wasn't about academic analysis. It was about fandom and critique.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
also my own reaction to it.
Mm-hmm.
And also it's sort of, part of me wonders if it might be kind of along generational lines as well.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause
Yeah.
there's a lot of 40 and above.
Yeah. I could see that.
And I think that particularly Hippolyta's, I mean, the name of her episode is called I Am. So it's all about a Black woman asserting her own needs first.
Yeah.
Not a man, not her children, her own needs first.
It's beautiful. We need more of that. We need a lot more of that on television. We need a lot more of that on screen. I've been telling all my friends and creatives and intellectuals, I've been telling all of them, I'm like, I want to see more examples of a female protagonist who is not trying to get married and not trying to have kids. Where's that? There is there are no examples, I feel like. And maybe not even career oriented. What is that? I mean, what the queerness of that?
And then you move into just in terms of Black women, you move into the Tyler Perry trope, where the women who are career oriented, who are putting themselves first, they're the evil bitches, and the ones who are going to find, their light skinned man to take care of them. It's I mean, it's problematic, but
it is, and it's a very old idea. It's a very old concept. When is it going to end?
Have you read
wonder.
Kristen Warner's piece on plastic representation?
Not yet, but I love Kristen Warner. I think she's amazing.
I think it's brilliant.
Thank you.
In terms of because sometimes are there things about some of these characters that could be seen as plastic? Absolutely. But it's better than I've seen in this genre, in this kind of hybrid genre before. So,
right.
And I think I'm not going to fault Misha Green for being ambitious. I'm not going to fault her for throwing everything at the wall. and so, and that's why, there are certain things that I consider glorious messes. Bamboozled was a glorious mess. Magnolia.
Oh yeah.
Was a glorious mess.
Oh yeah.
But
yes,
I am so glad that they went for it, because that stretches boundaries for other people's representations.
Yes, and you
Yeah,
could talk about it forever.
yeah, absolutely. Oh my
Because there's
God.
a lot
I
there.
mean, I just, there are certain parts of Bamboozled that out of nowhere I will think of and start laughing. Like the guy, yeah, the
Yeah,
guy's
it just creeps up on you.
audition where he's singing, them slapping them hoes, them slapping them hoes, them slapping them hoes. It's
Yeah,
hilarious.
it's funny. It's it's hilarious and it's beautiful. It's like that's what makes art good, right? It's like if it's weird, it's gonna stick out and it's gonna stay in your memory forever, you know? And if it's weird, it's funny. Yeah,
And
that's
that's the thing about humor.
yep.
There may be a joke that you just think that is so wrong, but it's here. But it's here. I
Yeah.
mean, not to invoke Louis C.K., but
Mhm.
and there was
He's funny.
the thing on he did the thing called Talking Funny. It
Mhm.
was Louis C.K., Ricky Gervais, Jerry
Chris Rock.
Seinfeld, and Chris Rock,
Yes.
and they talked about this guy was dying this guy was dying on stage,
Okay.
and he did this song parody, which is always like
Right. Last
sort of,
resort. It's like that
yeah,
with the shit jokes and the sex jokes. Yeah.
yeah. And he started singing a song,
Uh-huh.
and it was sitting on a cot 'cause I'm gay.
Yeah.
Now you are going to think about that.
Forever.
I think about that joke and that's what
Forever.
and Louis C.K. said, that was 20 years ago. I don't remember the name of the comic, but
We
I
don't have
remember
to.
the joke.
Yes. Yeah.
And it's and it's hard because I think Louis is I think he's very talented.
He
I
is.
I was never okay with
Mhm.
giving him a nigger pass.
Mm-mm.
I'm sorry, never
Yeah, no,
okay
it's
with
not
that.
cool. Yeah.
And and there's a level of arrogance
Mhm.
even in the apology that was not an apology in the New York Times. Um, that Louis is going to be fine.
Yeah.
He's going to be fine. A couple more years. Well, he's already performing.
He's already back. Yeah.
Yeah,
He's started touring since last year.
yeah.
So,
But then I think about Chappelle touring with Joe Rogan.
yeah, I'm a lot of LA comics and New York comics did move to Austin. And what I did was last month, I went to Boise, Idaho, because I've been reading the bullshit online where they say Boise is going to be the next Austin. I mean, that's how pathetic and low I was feeling, I guess. And I go to Boise and it's a shithole. I was like, no, it's not. I'm here too soon.
Yeah,
And I'm resisting Austin as much as I can.
yeah. I mean, it's also Texas. I mean, don't
Exactly.
forget that it's Texas.
Exactly. Bambi, actually, yesterday when I was in, not yesterday, the day before yesterday, I did a show in Portland. I met, there was an audience member, a black audience member, and he came up to me and he was like, a lot of men do this, but they just try to come up and try to be funny because they think they're funny. And he wasn't funny. He was very lame, right? But he was sweet because he was just trying to talk to me. And then we have a nice conversation. We shared a joint, and then I was like, okay, bye. And as we were saying bye, he says to me, shit, shit. And I just kind of rolled my eyes and I was like, bro, like, that's not cool, And he was like, he looked so sorry. and he looked like he was about to cry, and that made it up for me. I was like, oh, he looks really sad. It's fine. And I said to him, I was like, it's okay. He's like, oh, how can I make it right? And there's nothing he can say or do to make it right. He apologized. I said it's okay, and I just gotta now say bye. That's it.
I don't know what that means.
It's just it's a Chinese phrase that means thank you. And I'm not Chinese.
You're not Chinese.
And I'm fucking from Brooklyn, which I told him in our goddamn conversation earlier. And I remembered. I was like, oh, you said you're from Dallas. You get a pass. Like anything, just say whatever. It's fine. Yeah, I'm like,
you don't know the difference.
Dallas. Like, that is Texas, right? And I was like, it's cool. I was like, I forgot that you're from Dallas. It's all right. Carry on.
Well, and it's sort of like like when the whole thing, Margaret Cho does that whole bit about old bit about kung fu.
Yep.
About David Carradine, and it was like, hey, that guy's not Chinese. and yeah, it's just I get. I think that sometimes people get fat and happy, and they start congratulating themselves on their space, and start feeling as though they can grant other people passes.
Exactly. And I mean, just very recently in Austin, again, what's his face? Tony Hinchcliffe saying chink on stage over and over again.
Yeah.
Like, I wrote a bit about that. I was like, what makes you think you could say chink? Like, if you're white, you don't get to say it. I was like, and I said, it's okay. If you want to say it, I'm fine with it. Go ahead and say it, but say the N-word too. Like, why are you pussying out with the N-word? If you're going to say, I mean, really, like, commit to your identity as a racist. Also, like, I'm about inclusivity. Why are you leaving out Black people when you want to be racist? Be all inclusive, be racist to all if you're going to be racist. Don't pick and choose.
Be racist, be xenophobic, be transphobic. Do it. Do yourself up proud.
Right. But
yeah, but it does. It does. It's sort of like. Have you watched Bo Burnham's Inside?
I left it in my queue because he is so talented that I need to prepare myself mentally before I watch his stuff. But it's in my queue.
Yeah, I think it's very good. I think it's very good. And I was having a discussion with somebody saying, "What it really deals with how depression feels," and I said, "Maria Bamford's been doing that for 25 years."
Yeah. Do you know Joe Wong? This comedian named Joe Wong. He did the White House correspondence thing, like during Obama's administration, like I think first term. So okay, Joe Wong, who I love, he's in Pasadena now, so I would see him at shows and mics, and he's cool. And he says to me that Gary Goldman, who did the Great Depression, did you see the Great Depression?
No.
I thought it was okay, but I think Goldman's a really good writer. I think he's a supremely talented writer.
I don't like his delivery particularly.
He's very neat. He's a neat comic, very square, a little rote. Anyway, he once introduced Joe Wong onto stage by calling him a chink back in New York when they were in New York together, and that got stuck in Joe Wong's craw, of course, because it's rude as hell. And Joe Wong is an activist, an Asian American activist as well. So that really, he brought it up multiple times, but nobody gave a shit. Like Gary Goldman's Great Depression, all everybody does is celebrate that that special. And then I saw Joe Wong at a downtown mic, right before the pandemic, and then I was like, oh, Gary Goldman's Great Depression. And then Joe Wong rolls his eyes and says, whenever a white person feels sorry for himself, he always talks about his depression. And it's that's all he thinks about is his depression. He doesn't think about how he offended, other comedians of color during his career, And I was like, what do you mean? And that's when Joe Wong told me that Goldman called him a chink, calling him bringing him onto stage while hosting a show, which is that sets a tone, right?
It's yeah.
Kind of going.
It goes along with Louis getting the nigger pass. I'm not okay with that.
Yeah. And
go on. I'm sorry.
We see this in the news increasingly. There was a white woman who was screaming at an Asian couple, telling them to go back to China, this and that. And then the husband of that woman made a very emotional video and uploaded it saying, my wife is suffering from mental illness and da-da-da. And suddenly that is coming into the fore, right? It's that's something we, as scholars, I feel we do need to analyze. On the one hand, yeah, ableism is real, and we have to take into consideration mental disability. However, when that gets, when the dimensions of that gets too expanded to the point where they say well, this very, very wealthy white boy is mentally ill because all he knew was how to be a spoiled brat. And so, yeah, he ruined some people's lives, but, he gets a pass because that's an illness. Being a spoiled brat is a mental illness, right?
Yeah. What was the word that was used for that?
I don't remember.
I can't remember.
But you know exactly the case I'm talking about.
Yeah, I know it's case. And the thing is, and I think that personally, I think when male comics talk about mental illness, it's viewed differently than when female comics talk about mental illness.
Interesting. How so?
Because I think they're being brave.
The men?
Yeah.
With their vulnerability.
She's just crazy.
Right.
I mean, Maria Bamford does a bit about it in I think it's an Old Baby, where she says, I was doing this morning show, and this guy didn't like my wares, and he says, yeah, I don't get it. I think she does all these voices. I think she's schizophrenic. And she said, schizophrenic, bipolar 2, not my illness.
I love Maria Bamford.
Yeah. I actually wrote in, because instead of doing my work, listen to podcasts. And I wrote into one of my new favorite podcasts, which is called Murder Most Irish. It's a true crime thing. Just these two women. And their GBF, gay best friend, who is their engineer. And they were talking about Inside and how it was so remarkable. And I said exactly what I just said to you.
Yeah.
And it's, but it's not. I mean, she's been being courageous for 25 years.
Yeah. Never stopped. And she still doesn't we still see Maria Bamford in open mic rooms. She still does the one-on-ones with random people on Twitter to make sure that her jokes land. I mean, that is supreme diligence and respect, respectable. Because at a certain point, a lot of comics stop going to open mics. They consider themselves well, I'm beyond mics now, right? And yeah, okay, that's understandable, but that's a risk too. At a certain point, you're just saying, well, I know everything I say is gold and funny. I don't need to work these things out for the audience per se. But Maria Bamford doesn't do that. She still feels it out with her, non-paying audiences. Yeah.
When well, actually, this was paying, but the same quarter that you came and talked to my
Mm-hmm.
grad class,
Mm-hmm.
we watched one of her. Um, it was Jackie Cation opening, and
Oh yeah,
so
I love
she
her.
did a Zoom show,
That's awesome.
um,
Mm-hmm.
and it was awesome, and
Yeah.
it was clear she's working stuff out.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that process was even more valuable for them to
Yeah.
see.
It's amazing to watch that. Yeah. I saw her do it at the clubhouse, and it's like a free show, just donation based. You could leave money like in a bucket if you want, but it was like packed, and she had two openers, like up and coming comics, like that was awesome too. Like she's giving them credit, like that's amazing. And she did a full hour working stuff out, and like just watching that is so like it's such a unique and rare experience. And it was so fun to watch, and it gave me confidence as a comic too. I was just like, all of us are working, none of us come perfect. We're all a work in progress. What we bring to the stage is stuff that we know works. That's why I love comics. Like, comedians are such vulnerable people. They're so fucked up and full of insecurities and sadnesses and questions about everything, but when they go up on stage, like, they look so like rock solid, confident, badass. you know it's like a joy to see. And I feel lucky. Like, that's something I wrote down like while I was in Portland. I was like, I'm grateful to myself that I decided to be a comic. Like there's no other thing that I would have ever wanted to be more than this, and I'm happy that I'm doing it, you know?
No, as I said, I am your biggest fan. I totally, I wish at some point in time I had the chutzpah to try it. Um,
Well, I mean, you wrote an amazing book on it, so I mean, Laughing Mad is a very important book, a book I love very much. And honestly, like, reading that book, it gave me some, how do I say, it gave me some balls to just be like, I'm gonna just do what I want. Like, I'm just gonna write what I want to write, how I want to write it. Because like we can sit and question what we do all day every day and not do anything, but like I love the way that you wrote that book. It was just like I felt your passion in like every chapter. And I think that's something, grad students and all scholars can learn from. It's like that's what makes this project fun. That's what makes anything fun, is like make sure it's full of passion. But let me ask you this. This is more like an academic question, but
mhm.
like, what's your take on what realism is? Like, what is realism for you? Realism in the sense of like related to television, realism related to feminism. Like, how would you define realism?
Oh, is it? Does it exist?
Hmm.
Um, because like I wrote a piece about realism in relationship to homicide,
Yeah, I have
and
that
and
article.
and I talk about it in terms of emotional realism.
Right.
That there are things that happen that just hit you. I need to think about that when I'm talking about Lovecraft Country.
Mm.
Um, that they're things that just feel right.
Huh.
That it's following a logic that makes sense to you.
Okay.
Now, because it's my emotional realism doesn't mean that it's going to be somebody else's.
Right. Yeah.
Um, and even the whole idea of cinema verite,
Yeah.
you know, you're choosing to point the camera in one place and not
Right.
another.
Sure. Yeah.
And that's why something I say to my students all the time is everything has an agenda.
Yeah.
Don't don't get it twisted,
Yeah. Yeah.
because everything you choose to say, choose not to say, deal with, erase,
Yep.
those are all active choices.
Choices, yes.
And they're sometimes not choices that you are on the top of your mind,
Mm-hmm.
meaning it's not this, oh, this is my agenda.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't tell me that there aren't shows that are all white that didn't need to be all white.
Mm-hmm.
Girls, for example. I just hate that show, The White Hot Passion.
Yeah.
In Brooklyn. I mean, and that's why, uh, it's sort of like, in the stuff that I'm writing about Insecure,
Yeah.
Issa's not talking to me.
Mm.
I get that.
Right.
She is a 30 something, I'm almost 60.
Mm-hmm.
She is not talking to me.
Right.
But I appreciate that she is talking specifically to a Black female audience
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
who has been, even when you think about shows in the past, Living Single had Black writers,
Mm-hmm.
Girlfriends had zero.
Mm.
And so it's the whole idea that she she is creating her own emotional reality.
Right. I like that.
And so, with realism, like everything else, is subjective.
Yes. Oh, I like that a lot. I like that, you say realism is something you feel then. Like you feel what's real. And that's very affirming because it says if you feel it, then it's real, right? Like we get to say that. And that gives us agency, It lets us say like, okay, well, affect counts. Um even though these words and institutions and whatever may gaslight me and tell me one thing, what I'm feeling is another thing. And so let me declare it and say that that is my reality.
Well, thing about affect
Mm-hmm.
is it goes both ways
Hmm.
because there are people who are listening to Tucker Carlson
Mm-hmm.
and he is telling them the truth. He
Exactly.
is telling them what's real.
Right. Yeah. Uh-huh.
And, I can sit here and say, how can they disregard this?
Mm-hmm.
Um, how can they think there's a conspiracy?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then I think, well, what about, destroying a whole neighborhood in Philadelphia and nobody saying anything about it?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Council Row.
Yeah.
It's not like crazy bullshit doesn't happen,
Right.
but it's and I see this connecting with what we were talking about before
Mm-hmm.
about the depression.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's being vulnerable to talk about his
Mm-hmm.
depression.
Yes.
I feel like when, and even about, going to those Zoom things, the Zoom
Yeah.
sessions,
Mm-hmm.
when your assumption
Mm-hmm.
is that your privilege is going to continue,
Mm.
then it's, you're looking for a reason
Right.
why.
Yes. Yes.
I
Yeah.
mean, it goes all the way back to the Civil War.
Mm-hmm.
Who defended slavery the most? Subsistence farmers.
Yep. Yep.
Not because they
People who
had
needed them.
slaves, but they
Mm-hmm.
aspired to have slaves.
Yes. Yeah. 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 That's actually a key component to us understanding why so many working class people were pro-Trump and why so many migrant workers are pro-Trump and blah blah blah. Like this so-called other side. And I'm calling them the so-called other side. Not that they're not, but it's like, these concepts are becoming increasingly nebulous to me. is that every human being wants the same thing, in that they want to feel safe. They want to feel recognized and understood. It's a very childlike desire, very primal. It's the inner being, the infant in us wants it. Safety, security, recognition. And anybody can go and create that, construct that kind of universe for any individual.
Yeah, but I also think that baked in. Have you read Cast?
No, I haven't.
You need to read Cast.
Okay.
I think you'll because I get really frustrated with the folks who say it's all about class. It's not about race.
Hmm.
And it's like, how do you take those two things apart?
Exactly.
You know, you might have had folks who came via Ellis Island, but
Mm-hmm.
they weren't property.
Yep. They didn't come in chains, did they?
Yeah, and so it's but the whole notion of I'm looking for her last name is Wilkerson.
Okay.
I can't remember the first name.
Same.
But I really feel like part of it too, feeling safe is also about someone being below you.
Hmm.
I'm not at the bottom,
Mm-hmm.
so then I'm safer than I would be if I were at the bottom.
Yeah. Or what about this idea? The idea that there is no hierarchy.
Do you think that's true?
I think there are multiple realities at work at all times. And the one reality is the systemic reality.
Mm-hmm.
That's a real reality. And then the other reality is the reality that I try to create every morning with my meditations.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality that I try to create when I'm drawing and painting, which is that there are no hierarchies and that there are no rules. And something I just picked up the past couple of days being like, well, what is life? What is awareness? What is consciousness? It's just you're bearing witness to this moment in life. That's it. Okay, fine. So, like, I need to have that. You know, in those moments of freedom and home that I create for myself, I don't have a hierarchy. In those moments, all I have is safety. And I try to bring that into classrooms too. Like when I was teaching, I got the DYF and I was teaching my own class for the first
Mm-hmm.
time. And I was trying to create that sense of safety for students as much as I could, because all I sensed was just anxiety and fear and paranoia around them feeling like they're going to say the wrong thing or that they have said the wrong thing. And I was just, or that they watch something with pleasure when they shouldn't have, and I'm like, what? I was like, you guys should just free yourselves of that, like we're all students, and this is a space where you get to make mistakes and grow and develop, and I was like, as long as all of you guys have this um, desire to learn and remain curious, like you can do no wrong, like, and if you do, I'll let you know, and I will not shame you. I will not cancel you. I will not ruin your life. you're not you're not some powerful executive who is assaulting dozens if not hundreds of women. You know what I mean? Like, um I had to sort of remind them of those things and try to guide them the best I could. But anyway, like, I guess that's what I mean.
Well, I think that there's also a certain privilege built into being able to do that,
Mm-hmm.
because to some people that would even never even occur to them, because it's more about survive than thrive.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I know for sure that there are risks that I didn't take,
Hmm.
because as a working class kid,
Mm-hmm.
you get a job, you keep a job, you know, it was, and being by myself, being on my
Mm-hmm.
own,
Yeah.
it was also being self-supporting
Mm-hmm.
by my own contributions, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so I think it, well, I think that is freeing. And certainly I've had those moments
Mm-hmm.
where I'm writing. It's been a long time, but, when I was working on a screenplay and the characters were talking to me,
Mm-hmm.
I was just writing it down.
Yeah.
Um, but things are so, at the same time that we need that,
Mm-hmm.
we need permission
Mm-hmm.
to feel expansive.
Mm.
Um, we can't lose sight of the structural impediments
Mm-hmm.
that are becoming bigger and bigger and bigger.
Mm-hmm.
I just read that a federal judge declared DACA illegal.
What
Um,
a crazy timing. It's when In the Heights is like in theaters and stuff.
yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
and so it's you've got to, and that's the ideal balance.
Mm-hmm.
Balancing keeping my heart as free as I can,
Mm-hmm.
my soul as free as I can, while never forgetting that there are people who are trying to take freedoms away from me.
Oh yeah. 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 But I did hear something that was helpful to me. You know, they were like, power is not something anybody can give or take away. Power is something that is inherent in a being. And I try to think of that as much as I can. Because I understand all your feelings about that working class impossibility. My parents were farmers. I'm an immigrant. My parents are immigrants. My parents' business that they built went bankrupt with the 2008 collapse. Their house went foreclosed. I lived through 8 years of the Bush administration, all through high school and college, where every single adult I ever spoke to said to me, "You're never going to have a job." And despite all that, I still majored in English and minored in philosophy. I got a Fulbright, and yet when I came back from my Fulbright, I was working 3 part-time jobs, making $1,100 a month. And with that, I paid rent and utilities and MetroCard and student loans while living in New York City. Without healthcare, of course.
Of course.
I understand, like, I know the ins and outs of that. And, to graduate into a pandemic with a PhD and be on the phone for 45 minutes this morning trying to get to CalFresh to get my food stamps,
Hmm.
and to be on unemployment, which doesn't even cover my rent.
Right.
And on top of that, still go to Portland to do 2 shows that's going to be putting me in the red by hundreds of dollars, and buy a sketchbook and crayons for $2.99 so that I could draw and meditate. Um, I have to do those things. And I have to put aside this belief that, money will solve everything. And I continuously tell myself that, an artist and a thinker's lot is not, I mean, it doesn't make any sense in societal terms. It doesn't. Like
No.
like I said in the beginning of our podcast, which is it was just like they keep telling me, oh, you're actually a failure, like you're a nobody. You're never gonna nothing is ever gonna work out. The ideas you present are ridiculous and they're preposterous. And I'm just like, I'm okay with all of that. All of that is your opinion, man. And I'm doing what I do because this is the most liberating thing for me. This is the thing that brings me the most joy and the most calm and equilibrium. And I have to prioritize what my inner being considers the most important. And
Well, you're feeding your
that does
soul.
yeah. And that does mean appearing as though I make no sense. And I really
Well,
stopped giving a shit.
you don't necessarily make sense in capitalist terms,
Yeah, I make zero
in
sense.
neoliberal terms.
Yeah, zero sense.
You know,
Yeah.
and that's okay.
Yeah.
It's I guess I wish, as I said earlier, I
Mm-hmm.
wish I hadn't, because I don't think I played it safe, but I
Mm-hmm.
think I played it safer.
But I think you were bold, Bambi. Really. I mean, like getting a PhD, like trying to get a PhD from a working class family, that is fucking bold. Like UCLA had so many rich kids, especially like
Oh,
rich Asian kids. My God, the money that they come reeking in, It was ridiculous. But my cohort, um mostly working class, all people of color, and like it's bold. It is, it is. And like again, that your book, like Laughing Mad, was bold, and you know, I felt the passion in it because of that background you have, I feel. Like somebody who comes from like a cushy ass life who doesn't have the fire under their ass at every waking moment. Like they're not going to write with passion and fire in every line like you do.
that's so
So
nice of you to say.
yeah, but that's my truth. That's how I feel. Like I recognize that, And so yeah, I mean, what's the point of lamenting having pursued some safety? Like to me, it just comes with the territory. Like for me, it's about getting rid of that safety. Like, no, remove the vest. And like I'm listening to like David Cho's guest appearances on podcasts a lot.
Hmm.
And I'm learning a lot from him. Like I identify with him very much. And he has the financial security now to just fuck off and be like one of these like white dudes who are into ayahuasca all day, every day. That's cool. But I'm glad that he's not a white guy doing that. I'm glad that he's a middle child, Korean immigrant child, grew up in SoCal with nothing, didn't go to school, hitchhiked all over, risked his life for experience and art. Like I'm learning a lot from him. And Bambi, like you're still living, you could increasingly remove your safety vest. It's never too late. Even as you write these articles on Insecure and Lovecraft, like remove more
No,
safety vests, right?
and it's interesting that you say that about Laughing Mad, just because there were very few books on stand up
I
then.
know. Yeah.
And finally, I just said, I've got to write my book.
Yes.
And if it gets me tenure, fine. If it doesn't, that's where it's going to be.
Yeah.
And and of course, when your first book should never win an award.
Mm.
It just shouldn't, because there's
Mm.
nowhere to go but down.
Mm.
But it's, I, I guess, if I were to define myself, I think of myself as a teacher who does scholarship. not a scholar who teaches. And if I'm not teaching, if I'm not creating some kind of affinity, if I'm not pulling you into the subjectivity of this analysis, then I'm not doing my job. Because it's about teaching. I'm not interested in just talking to other academics. Because more and more you realize how just what the divisions are.
Yeah.
Like I was in trying to remember something for the humanities for all of us. And they said and they were asking how many people are first generation college students. And there were 3 of us.
Oh my God.
3. And a lot of my colleagues are professors' kids.
Yeah.
Or are the kids of lawyers and doctors, and we're
Yuppies
talking,
kids.
yeah, you're talking upper middle class.
Yeah.
And so I did not play it safe in that there's like, if the apocalypse happens tomorrow, I'm food. Like there's nothing else I can do. Kyle Kinane does a great bit about that, about how people are not going to say, "Oh, let's go into the city to find a clown to keep us entertained." But in some ways, yeah. But I do feel like the way I feel my contribution in that really is connecting with the teacher part.
Yeah.
Is, I look at Raquel and I look at Raquel Gates and I look at Kristen Warner. Not that they were my students, but I've known them since they were baby scholars.
Right.
And so, I helped to nurture them.
Yeah.
Just the same way John and Deshome helped to nurture me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think there are lots of people in academia who really aren't interested in that.
Yeah, that's very true.
It's for the greater glory of me.
Yeah, that's so true. I think a good teacher is like invaluable, and I know that you're invaluable to your students. I mean, Ellen Scott being one of them,
Yeah, I love
and
Ellen.
Ellen's an amazing teacher too, I mean, I learn a lot from, folks like you, folks like John Caldwell, even Noriega. Like, I think he gets misconstrued as like more of a scholar rather than a teacher, but like, at least for me, he was a really great advisor. And what I loved about working with Chon was like, especially when I would have those freak out moments, like when I went to South Korea to do field work, like the moment I got there, I was freaking out and I was like,
Of course.
I don't know, I'm questioning everything. And he just wrote like a couple sentences in an email back to me. He was just like, don't think about theory first. Do your work and then plug in the theory to help you. That's all he had to say. And then I was like, all right. And then I chilled out, and I just did my field work freely and, got a very rich experience out of it. And like, these teachers, like they stay with you for a lifetime, like Tashome and John Caldwell, they stay with you a lifetime, so in that way, we're tremendous influencers. And that's why I say, like, why are STEM fields getting $200,000 whereas our work gets $28,000? It's like we're also life givers and life savers, right? It's like, come on.
Because it's hard to monetize us.
And you know what, Bambi? Like, this is what I was also thinking. This is like a joke that I was like kind of working on, but it's like the reason why they pay us so little is because we know too much. You know, they're trying to kill us. They're trying to squash
Yeah.
us so that we stop talking about it. We know this is all a conspiracy. So, I mean, I don't know if there's liberation in that, but you know, like I'm glad that, like, you know, I know scholars like you. I'm glad that there are scholars like you out there, teachers like you out there, you know, writing and teaching and sharing your truth and your perspectives. I think that enriches our society. So I'm grateful to you for that.
Well, and I'm grateful, I'm grateful to be able to talk with you and hear your experience because you've done things I haven't done, but there are, as I think I shared with you before, there's students of mine who are who are in the comedy classes, who are
Mm,
trying to do it,
yeah.
who are with Second City now, or,
Mm-hmm.
or um, doing something different, although improv's entirely different from stand up. Um, I privilege stand up. I'll be clear about that. I just do. And it's because it's the purest form of comedy. It's you
Yeah.
and a mic.
That's it.
That's it.
Yeah. Nothing else. And Bambi, I was rewatching 8 Mile last night, which is not as good of a movie as I thought it was, but like the similarities between like freestyle rapping and stand up, like the way it works, that's all it is
Mhm.
like people just gather and they have a moment and they share their art, and then the people disperse and it's as if nothing was ever there. It could be a random space. Like there was a moment in the Detroit, like one of the parking lots in Detroit, you know, that's a scene. And I was just like, that's how stand up is. Like we just do it at a park or a rooftop or somebody's garage or somebody's backyard, or we all gather, have that moment, and then it disperse. And I'm just like, that is so beautiful, right?
And in so many ways, it's culturally rooted, right? Because
Yeah.
a battle is snaps.
Yeah.
That's signifying. That's
Yeah.
that's what it is.
Yeah.
Um, there are different tweaks to it,
Right.
but it's really, and I think there are so many cultures where there's an oral tradition
Mm-hmm.
that are that's so vital, and
Yes.
and those oral traditions transcend class
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
because one generation speaks to another
Mm-hmm.
when it's possible. Of
Yeah.
course, you look at whole generations of people, uh, uh, black folks in the 80s and in the 90s, what the war on drugs did.
Yeah.
Um, but I just think it's really important to acknowledge all of the influences, as many as you can. What how I got here, you know,
Mm.
how I found my voice,
Mm-hmm.
and and you know, I will never be a stand-up comic,
Yeah.
but what has influenced me is that I want people to laugh
Mm-hmm.
while they're reading about comedy.
Mm-hmm.
I want them to get a laugh.
Yeah.
Because if you can't do that, why are you talking about comedy?
Yeah.
Um, and I don't feel comfortable in a classroom until I get my first laugh.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a form of
So
acceptance.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
It's affirming.
it's a way of being vulnerable
Mm-hmm.
without losing control.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Comics are control freaks.
So are most professors.
Yeah. So much so that very few of them even agreed to come on my podcast. It's like, it's just a chat. They're like, but can you send me like more information? It's like, oh my God, when are you going to let go, man? But anyway, Bambi, I know you have to go back to writing, so I don't want to eat up any more of your time, but thank you for having this time with me. It was such a pleasure
Oh, it was
talking to you.
wonderful. It's
Yeah.
wonderful. Anytime, anytime.